Welcome to the 1960s, the decade that defined muscle cars. The 1960s was a revolutionary era in automotive history, a time when American car culture shifted into high gear and introduced what would become an enduring icon, the muscle car. These beasts of the road, packing monstrous engines into otherwise unassuming mid-sized and full-size bodies, dominated the streets and racetracks alike. Join us as we explore 10 muscle machines that made an indelible mark on the decade and cemented their place in automotive lore. The 1962 Pontiac Catalina Super Duty. Let's begin with a trailblazer. The 1962 Pontiac Catalina Super Duty. Although the full-sized Pontiac Catalina and Grand Prix weren't initially conceived as muscle cars, a term that hadn't yet been coined, these models set the stage for what was to come. At the time, full-sized cars, particularly from Ford, Chevy, and Chrysler, were competing fiercely in motorsports, tearing up drag strips and speedways across the country. Pontiac, not one to be left out, created a powerhouse with their Super Duty line. Under the hood of the Catalina Super Duty was the mighty 421 cubic inch V8 engine, delivering an astonishing 405 horsepower. Cars built after March 1962 were even more potent, featuring larger valves and freer-flowing intake manifolds for enhanced performance. Pontiac didn't just stop at engine upgrades. They lightened some models by using aluminum body panels, making the Catalina a formidable presence both on the track and on the streets. Though fewer than 200 of these Super Duty Catalinas were built, they laid the groundwork for the muscle car explosion that would soon sweep the nation. The 1963 Plymouth Savoy Max Wedge. By the early 1960s, Chrysler had already begun moving away from the full-sized car platforms that dominated the racing scene. In 1962, they introduced the Max Wedge-equipped Plymouth Savoy, part of the intermediate B-body range. Although a last-minute switch to a smaller platform left the designs looking somewhat odd, Chrysler didn't waste time putting their engineering prowess to work. The result was the Max Wedge engine, a 413 cubic inch big block capable of generating tremendous power. By 1963, Chrysler had refined this engine further, expanding it to 426 cubic inches and ramping up horsepower to 425. Coupled with the industry's first 3-speed automatic transmission, the lightweight Savoy Max Wedge became nearly unbeatable on the drag strip. Though only about 250 of these cars were built, they made a huge impact. These Max Wedge-equipped cars were among the first to truly embody the muscle car formula, a mid-sized body paired with a massive engine. The 1964 Ford Fairlane Thunderbolt. If you're talking about the pioneer of muscle cars, you can't ignore the 1964 Ford Fairlane Thunderbolt. By 1963, full-size cars were still being relied upon to dominate in racing, but Ford realized they needed something smaller and lighter to stay competitive. Enter the Fairlane Thunderbolt, a car that brought Ford's high-output 427 cubic inch V8 engine into a mid-size body. The Thunderbolt, with its 425 horsepower engine, was a fearsome competitor. Ford produced just 100 of these cars in 1964. The only year of its production. Built for drag racing, the Thunderbolt featured lightweight fiberglass body panels and plexiglass windows to shave off every possible ounce. Though banned from NASCAR, these cars dominated the drag strip, securing the 1964 NHRA Superstock Championship for Ford. With its blend of raw power and lightweight construction, the Thunderbolt helped Ford cement its place in muscle car history. The 1965 Pontiac GTO Tri-Power. For many, 1964 marked the true birth of the muscle car era, thanks to the introduction of the Pontiac GTO. Designed as an option package for the midsize Tempest, the GTO sidestepped GM's corporate rules limiting engine displacement in midsize cars by offering a 389 cubic inch V8. This move was risky, but the GTO was an instant success, and by 1965 it had become even more refined. The 1965 GTO, particularly with its legendary tri-power carburation setup, remains one of the most beloved muscle cars in the era. Its 389 V8 with three two-barreled carburetors produced 360 horsepower, plenty to thrill drivers. This model also featured improved suspension, brakes, and handling, making it as fun to drive as it was fast. With over 75,000 units sold, the 1965 GTO proved that the muscle car movement was here to stay.
340 horsepower.
The 1966 Dodge Coronet Hemi. In 1966, Chrysler decided to take its street performance to the next level by offering the legendary 426 Hemi engine to the public. Previously restricted to racing, the Hemi engine was now available to any customer who could afford it. This engine, delivering 425 horsepower, had already proven its dominance on the track, with Richard Petty famously driving a Hemi-powered Plymouth to a clean sweep in NASCAR in 1964. By making the Hemi available to the masses, Dodge created one of the most iconic muscle cars of all time. The 1966 Dodge Coronet Hemi, with its race-bred engine, became a legend in its own right. It marked the beginning of Chrysler's Hemi era, a time when the company would dominate both on the streets and in racing. The 1968 AMC AMX. American Motors Corporation, AMC, was relatively late to the muscle car game, but when they entered, they did so in style. The 1968 AMC AMX was a two-seat sports car designed to compete with the likes of the Ford Mustang and Chevrolet Corvette. Powered by a 315 horsepower, 390 cubic inch V8, the AMX was a lightweight, agile car with a reputation for blistering acceleration. AMC's strategy was to offer high performance at a lower price point than its competitors, and the AMX was a prime example of this philosophy. At just over 3,000 pounds, the AMX could hit 60 miles per hour in under 7 seconds, a remarkable feat for its time. While AMC didn't have the same muscle car pedigree as the Big Three, the AMX proved that they could go toe-to-toe with the best. The 1969 Chevy COPO Camaro 427. The 1969 Chevrolet COPO Camaro stands as one of the most coveted muscle cars of the era, primarily due to its secretive nature. COPO, or Central Office Production Order, was typically used by Chevy to build special fleet vehicles. However, a few savvy dealers realized they could use this system to order Camaros equipped with Chevy's most powerful engine, the 427 cubic inch V8, normally reserved for Corvettes. The COPO 427 Camaro was a sleeper in every sense of the word. Externally, it looked like a typical Camaro, but under the hood, it packed a 425 horsepower monster. Only 69 were built with the ultra-rare ZL1 aluminum block engine, making these some of the most sought-after muscle cars ever produced. Today, they're highly prized by collectors and enthusiasts alike. The 1969 Ford Boss 429 Mustang. While the Ford Mustang is often classified as a pony car, the 1969 Boss 429 was a true muscle car in spirit. Built to homologate Ford's 429 Hemi engine for NASCAR, the Boss 429 Mustang was more of a race car than a street car. With just 859 units produced in 1969, it's also one of the rarest Mustangs ever built. Under the hood was a 375 horsepower V8, but with the right tuning, this engine could deliver far more. The Boss 429 was a purpose-built machine, with extensive modifications needed to fit the massive engine into the Mustang's relatively small engine bay. It wasn't the quickest Mustang on the street, but its NASCAR pedigree and limited production make it one of the most iconic muscle cars of the 1960s. The 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona. The Dodge Charger Daytona is perhaps the most outlandish muscle car of the 1960s. With its long nose cone and massive rear wing, the Daytona was built for one purpose: to dominate NASCAR. Dodge needed to sell 500 units to the public to meet the homologation requirements, and in so doing, they created an instant icon. Powered by the 426 Hemi, the Daytona was as fast as it looked. Its aerodynamic design allowed it to reach speeds that were previously unimaginable for stock cars, and it went on to become the first NASCAR vehicle to break the 200-mile-per-hour barrier. Though only 503 were built, the Charger Daytona remains one of the most recognizable muscle cars of all time. The 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle SS 454. No discussion of muscle cars would be complete without mentioning the 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle SS 454. As the muscle car era reached its peak, Chevrolet unleashed the Chevelle SS with the LS6 454 cubic inch V8. With 450 horsepower, it was the most powerful engine ever offered in a production car at the time. The 1970 Chevelle SS 454 was the epitome of what a muscle car should be: big, loud, and incredibly fast. Though only 4,475 were built with the LS6 engine, the Chevelle SS remains one of the most popular and revered muscle cars to this day. In conclusion, the 1960s were a golden age for muscle cars, a time when American automakers pushed the limits of performance and created some of the most iconic vehicles ever to hit the road. These 10 cars are more than just machines. They are legends that continue to inspire car enthusiasts around the world. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more awesome content. Your support means the world to us.